There is a version of your life playing right now that no one else can see, a conversation you rehearsed 100 times that never happened, an argument you won perfectly in your own mind, a future moment where someone finally understands you, finally sees you, finally says exactly what you needed to hear. And the strangest part, when you were inside that imagined moment, something in your chest actually felt it. The relief was real, the anger was real, the warmth was real, but the moment itself never was. If that sounds familiar, I want you to stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you is not a diagnosis. It's not a flaw. It's not something broken inside you. It is, in fact, one of the most quietly human things a person can do. And yet, almost no one talks about it honestly. Most people who live inside imagined scenarios don't tell anyone. How would you even explain it? I spend hours having conversations with people who aren't there. It sounds strange out loud. So you keep it private. You do it in the shower, on long walks, right before you fall asleep, entire scenes playing out behind your eyes, vivid and emotionally charged, while the real world waits just outside your thoughts, and somewhere along the way, you may have started to wonder, why can't I stop? Here's what psychology tells us, and it's far more layered than most people expect. Your brain is not malfunctioning when it creates these scenarios. It is actually doing something it was designed to do. Neuroscientists call it mental simulation, the brain's ability to run internal rehearsals of possible situations before they occur in real life. It's the same mechanism that lets athletes visualize a perfect performance before a competition. The same process that helps a surgeon mentally walk through a procedure the night before. In controlled, intentional doses, this ability is extraordinary, but for some people, and you may be one of them, the simulation system doesn't wait for an invitation. It runs automatically, constantly, without permission. You're not choosing to imagine these scenarios. They arrive, and once they begin, they pull you in completely. So the question isn't whether your brain is doing this, the question is why yours does it so often. And this is where the psychology becomes something deeply personal. People who frequently lose themselves in imagined conversations almost always share one invisible thread. Their nervous system learned at some point, often very early, that the real world was unpredictable. That real conversations didn't go the way they should, that real people didn't respond the way you needed. Maybe you grew up in an environment where your words were dismissed, where saying the right thing still didn't produce safety, where you could explain yourself perfectly and still not be heard. So your mind built a place where it could be heard. A private theater, a space where you finally said the thing you couldn't say, where the other person finally understood, where the ending made sense. Psychologists sometimes describe this as a response to what's called ambiguous loss, the grief of losing something that was never clearly defined. Not a death, not a dramatic event, just a slow, quiet sense that something important was missing. Connection, validation, control, and when the real world couldn't provide those things reliably, your imagination became the only space where they felt guaranteed. But here's what makes this pattern so difficult to recognize from the inside. The imagined world feels better. It works better, and over time the brain starts to prefer it, and that preference is exactly where something much deeper begins. Think about what happens inside a mind that has learned to prefer its own stories over reality. It begins subtly. You have a difficult conversation coming up, so you rehearse it mentally, reasonable, even helpful. But then you rehearse it again, and again, and again, each version slightly different, each imagined response more satisfying than the last. Hours pass, the actual conversation hasn't happened yet, but emotionally, you've already lived through it a dozen times. You arrive exhausted before anything real has even begun. This is what psychologists call cognitive avoidance, dressed as preparation. It looks like planning, it feels like control, but underneath, it is your nervous system quietly saying, "I don't trust reality to give me what I need." And the longer this pattern continues, the wider the gap becomes. The gap between the world inside your mind and the world that actually exists outside it. Real relationships start feeling disappointing, not because people are failing you, but because no real person can ever match the perfectly scripted version your imagination created for them. This is the quiet cost nobody warns you about, but here is the shift. The very sensitivity that pulls you into imagined worlds, that deep need to be understood, to process, to rehearse, that is not your weakness. That is your depth. The healing doesn't come from stopping the imagination. It comes from slowly, gently, learning to trust reality again. One small, honest conversation at a time. One imperfect moment at a time. Because real life will never be perfectly scripted. But it will be real, and real, however messy, however uncertain, is the only place where you can truly be found. If this resonated with something quiet inside you, you are not alone. More people than you know live inside these invisible theaters. And if this video helped you understand yourself a little better tonight, that's exactly why this exists.